Hey guys, today's video I'm going to be talking about dissociation. So I'm going to go through what dissociation is, what some different types of dissociation can be, some things that can cause it, and some things that you can do about it, and also talk a little bit about my personal experience with dissociation. So dissociation is basically a break in how your mind is processing and handling different information. So this can cause different symptoms. And these are things like feeling disconnected from your thoughts, disconnected from emotions, memories, surroundings, your sense of self, and it can also mess with your sense of time. So the first thing that I want to say is that most people at some point in their life will experience dissociation. So some of these events of dissociation that a lot of people can experience are things like when you're driving and you're driving a long distance and it's a route you've taken a lot and you just kind of zone out while you're driving and you get from point A to point B, but you don't 100% remember the drive. That is a totally normal dissociation event that happens to a lot of people. Other examples are like daydreaming. So there is a level of this that is normal, but in someone with that experiences maybe longer periods of dissociation or more intense periods of dissociation where they're actually completely losing chunks of memory and things like that, that can be a sign of another underlying mental health condition causing dissociation that is more than the normal level that people have. So there's also two different kind of subgroups of dissociation, and those are depersonalization and derealization. So depersonalization is when you feel disconnected from yourself and from your body. And a lot of the times people will describe depersonalization as kind of feeling like they're watching themselves kind of from the outside. And derealization is that same disconnect, but from your surroundings. So people and objects around you seem unreal, and you start to feel like, wherever you are, like these things aren't real. But usually with derealization, with depersonalization, that these aren't normal feelings. That this is something wrong. So it's different from something like psychosis, where in psychosis you might be feeling like things around you are unreal, but usually in the case of psychosis, you are not aware that you are in a period of psychosis. With depersonalization and derealization, you can usually tell that is what's going on. So it's not that you actually think that things are unreal, it's just they feel unreal. So there are a couple different things that can cause dissociation and the other types of dissociation as well. And the most common is trauma. Some other things, there are drugs that can induce dissociation. A lot of stress can induce dissociation. One of the biggest causes of it is something traumatic, because dissociation is your brain's way of protecting you. So usually if you experience a really traumatic event, your brain is going to dissociate, so disconnect you from what you're experiencing, and that is to help you survive whatever is going on. So dissociation can be a symptom in a lot of different diagnoses. So I'm just going to name a few here. Things like borderline personality disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, PTSD, schizophrenia, depression, a lot of others, and dissociative identity disorder. That's one of the biggest ones, and probably one of the biggest examples of very extreme dissociation, to the point that you aren't remembering a lot of things. But a lot of mental health issues can cause dissociation, and it usually ends up being your brain's way of handling stress. So especially if you've experienced trauma at a young age, your brain has likely learned to dissociate just to help keep you safe from the things that were happening, when you were experiencing trauma at a young age. And then once your brain gets in the habit of doing that, it'll start doing that more often in instances where you are very stressed, even if it's, to a lesser degree than a traumatic event. You still might start dissociating when you're experiencing any level of stress. So now I'm going to talk just a little bit about my experiences with dissociation. So I experience very intense dissociation a lot of the times when I am talking about past trauma. So for me, this happens a lot in the therapy setting. So if I am talking about my trauma, sometimes I end up zoning out. And when this happens to a very intense degree, I can't talk. I don't really have a sense of time of how long I've been dissociating for. And sometimes I don't really know where I am because I'm just completely like removed from the situation. And this is caused by the stress of thinking about a traumatic event again. I've also experienced depersonalization, and a lot of the times depersonalization will follow the stressful therapy session. So if I had a therapy session where I've talked a lot about my trauma and I ended up dissociating during the session for some, couple days, week or two, sometimes after the therapy session, I will end up experiencing a lot of depersonalization where I am very disconnected from myself. And the way I describe this is it feels like I'm playing a third-person video game. So it's like I see myself doing the things. I know I'm controlling the actions, but I'm like one step removed from it. So it's not me and my body doing these things. It's me sort of out of my body doing these things where I know it's me, but I don't feel like I am in there in the situation. It's kind of difficult and kind of hard to explain. That's why the closest thing I can get is like playing a third-person video game. I've also experienced derealization where I feel like nothing around me is real, the people around me aren't real. And similarly to depersonalization, this usually follows a stressful therapy session. So if I, again, get really into trauma work and I get very overwhelmed and dissociated from it in the days following that session, a lot of the times I will end up in a state of derealization, kind of feeling like nothing around me is real. And that's definitely something that is triggered by a lot of stress. So there are some ways to get out of dissociation. So most of the ways to get out of it is to use some sort of grounding technique. So one of the things that my therapist will use in my therapy sessions when I dissociate is he will ask me to look around the room and find things that are a certain color. So he'll say, find something yellow in the room. And a lot of these times I can't talk, but he can watch me like look around the room with my eyes and kind of focus on something. And then he usually knows I found something that's that color. And then he'll move on to a different color. So that can help if you are feeling a lot of derealization. You can kind of look around you, see what's real, what's in the room with you. Some other good grounding things that I like to use are essential oils. So I keep peppermint oil. You can use any kind of essential oil. I keep peppermint oil with me because it's an extremely strong smell. So I know that it's going to help ground me. I also like to use sour or spicy candies. So like fireballs or warheads, because it gives you a very strong physical taste that you can anchor yourself into when you're feeling dissociated, and also cold things. So like holding a frozen water bottle, holding an ice pack, things like that, again, will help engage your senses and help bring you back into the present moment and out of your dissociation. So another thing that I like to do is kind of preempt my dissociation. So if I know that I'm going into a conversation that's going to be really stressful, I will do things to prepare. So a lot of the times when I go into a therapy session where I know I'm going to be talking about trauma and there's a high chance of me dissociating, I will start, before I start having the conversations, I will put a piece of gum in my mouth. So that way I have something to chew on, something to, think about the texture of and the taste of, to try to help lessen the chance of me completely dissociating. Another thing that I like to do is if I, again, am going in to talk about trauma or just having any sort of stressful conversation with a friend, a family member, anything, I will sometimes take some of my peppermint oil and I will put a little bit in my hair on each side, because then as I'm talking, as I'm, moving around a little bit, I'll be able to smell the peppermint oil, and that can also help keep me grounded in the moment. Also, you can put it on your wrists, which works just as well. I like to put it closer to my face, like in my hair, because then I'm more likely to smell it. But I also talk with my hands a lot. So if I put it on my wrists and I'm talking with my hands, I can also use it that way to help ground me. So it's really good if you kind of recognize a pattern of dissociation. Like for me, I've recognized that it happens to some degree. Sometimes it's super intense and lasts a really long time. And sometimes I can still talk and have a conversation, but I can feel myself kind of pulling back. So I know that whenever I talk about trauma in therapy, I know I'm going to experience at least some level of dissociation. So I try to do one or two things before having that conversation to help lower the intensity of the dissociation and also help shorten the duration. So that's using the gum, using peppermint oil, sometimes even just having a fidget, something in your hands that you can hold and play with and ground yourself with, that can help a lot too. So that's it for today's video on dissociation. So again, just a brief recap. Dissociation is kind of a breakdown in how your brain is processing information. It can make you feel out of your body. It can make you feel very disconnected from your feelings, from your memories, from physical sensation, from time, everything like that. It's most often triggered by trauma. It becomes a trauma response, and it's your brain's way of trying to protect you from very stressful events. So that's basically it for what dissociation is and my experience with it. If you have any questions, as always, please feel free to leave those in the comments, and I would love to answer them. I've experienced a lot of dissociation, so I am always willing to talk about it, always willing to explain more of what it's like, the things I do to help. And if this is something that you experience and you found something that has helped you get out of dissociation or lessen it, I would also love to see that in the comments, because I'm always looking for new ways to help deal with it, because dissociation is very annoying and it happens a lot. So I always like to see what kind of tips and tricks people have and how they deal with it, because maybe it's something that can help me too. I hope this video helped you guys understand a little bit more about dissociation and what you can do about it. And thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thanks.